Can I use this one?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, we're going to talk a bit about VLC. It's a weird story, and many weird story. Let me tell you what I'm doing, right? So I'm the president of the nonprofit. I'm actually a developer of VLC, probably the second most person with most commit. I work on David, on VLC, on everything that is DVD, breaking DVD encryption, Blu-rays, breaking Blu-ray decryption, X264, which is the most used encoder in the world, and so many others. I work on FFmpeg. I have a new company which is doing open source control of robots called Kyber. I've created 7 or 8 companies, and I'm now the member of the new European Open Source Academy. VLC and mostly VideoLAN, the goal is that everyone is using a cone on their computer, which makes no sense, right? It's, of course, a student joke that is impossible to change. But let me explain you the story, right? So it's a very French, weird story. It starts at the École Centrale Paris, which is those high university engineering school, a bit elite school in France, focused on engineering. And this one is a bit weird because it was on a private campus. So it's an open school paid by the government, but it's on basically a campus that was built by ex-students, right? So it's very weird because everything there was managed by students. The piece of land was bought by ex-students, the TV, the radio, the food, the library, everything was managed by students. And of course, in the 1980s, the network was developed, and it was something called tokenring. Does anyone here knows about tokenring? Okay, guys, you're old. For anyone else, so tokenring is a network where you don't have routers, right? It would be like if everyone in the room would like hold their hand of each other, and then you would like press your hands to give some more, right? And if you want you to talk to that person over there, you go through all of those. It's great because it's cheap. You don't have routers, you just have computers, and it's easy. Except it's slow, right? So in the 1980s, you're doing a telnet to do newsgroup and mails. That is good enough. But in the 1990s, world starts video games, right? And the problem with tokenring is that it has high latency. And what happens when you have latency in video games? You die. And so they wanted to have a new network, right? And so the students arrive and say, go to the university, right? The police that is at the top, and say, hey, you want it? We need a new network. Why? To work, because there is something called the web, right? And the university, in the most French way ever, to tell someone, go fuck yourself, but saying in a nice way, they said, oh, we are very sorry. We would love to help you, but you understand, the campus is not ours, so go and find partners. Okay, go away. Right? But the students, well, they want their network, right? So what do? Well, they go and see partners. And they mostly see a company in France called Bouygues, who's basically building a lot of buildings, but also own TV stations, and says, okay, the future of video is satellite. Well, no, it's not, but in 1994, that was a good bet. And so instead of buying 1,500 satellite dishes and decoders, those decoders at that time were around 30 kilos, right? And of course, managed by students who are very, very careful about their hardware, right? The idea was to put one big dish over there and then stream that over the network. So at that time, like the most powerful computer you can buy is a Pentium 90, right? Or everyone has 4086 at 32 or 33 or 60 megahertz. So video decoding in real time is science fiction. But you know what? They do it, right? And so they got takes a year and a half. They have a very, very amazing network built on ATM. Also, if you know what it is, you're old. 155 megabits per second backbone, right? Because top of the art. Probably in 1995, this was like one of the best networks in Europe. They do a demo, right? Everything is, of course, a hack. It's on Linux, obviously. And it crashes after 45 seconds. Well, that's okay. The demo stops at 42, and you explain that 42 is the best number, and you're done with it, right? That's a true story. And we run, and of course, there was tons of memory leaks, right? So the computer has 64 megabytes of memory instead of the usual 8. And the project should have stopped there. Everyone was happy, Network 2000 project, amazing, blah, blah, blah. Yet, 2 students says, well, you know what? Maybe there are other people who care about that. And they want to make it open source. And so they start this project, which is video on a local network and becomes VideoLAN. Amazing name again. Sorry. So they restart this project and this becomes VideoLAN. But the university doesn't want that to be open source. And they don't want to be open source because they believe that the MPEG-2 decoder and the MPEG-2 video decoder could give money and your royalties to the school. So what they do is they actually make it open source, but they don't tell the university. So here there is a link, right? So there is a connection to Renater, which is like a university network for internet in France. And the link is here, right? But they have like a very specific IP address. So whenever you go on the website of VideoLAN at that time from a university IP, well, you don't see the source. Anyone else in the world, you see the source, right? So one day, the president or the director of the university arrives and gets congratulations, like, oh, you're doing open source by someone very high from large company in the US. And, oh, wow, you're a visionary, you know what is open source and so on. And of course, the guy has no idea what he's talking about. And then something like 2 weeks later, the university agrees to relicense everything from VideoLAN as a GPL project. Yeah, probably not the best way, but it worked. So, yay. This became later on. So it was a student project. VideoLAN does a ton of things. There is something called the VideoLAN client, which becomes VLC, but we do a ton of other things, right? And so I created in 2007 the non-profit organization. I took most of the software. We do VLC, we do a ton of other things, but we're also the core of all the multimedia community. The code, insane, stupid, makes no sense, best marketing decision ever, right? It is so recognizable, right? When I go to the middle of India or China or even South Africa and I tell, well, you know, I'm from the École Centrale Paris, no one cares, right? I work on VLC, a few, yes. No, I work on the cone that plays video. Oh yeah, sure. 25% of the traffic that goes to our website is cone player, search on Google or DuckDuckGo. We are talking about around 1 million downloads per day on our website, right? So that we are talking about 6.5 billion on our website downloads. The last version of VLC was downloaded, and of course this is mostly Windows and Mac, right? Because Linux have proper package management, around 520 million for only one single version. As I say often, it's the most used French software in the world and the less profitable. Well, if you take 0 and you divide by 500 million, that's not much, or a lot, depends on how you say it. It's probably one of the most European software, actually. Probably the second contender would be Spotify, but like we're talking about like very large numbers. Yeah. It got popular because it could play anything, right? And there is a joke like you can put a pancake in your DVD drives and VLC will play it. Actually, no. Yes, we tried. But again, it's a weird story, right? The reason, like, no one at the beginning says, well, we are going to do a player that can play anything, right? It was just like, when they're starting the VideoLAN client project, it was supposed to be open source, but cross-platform. And when we meant cross-platform, we cared about Linux and BOS. Yeah, we had a very strong BOS community, don't ask me why. And when it became open source, the people who actually ported it to Windows and to Mac were actually non-students of the schools, right? One was in England, one was, I think, in Netherlands. And because, of course, it was done on Linux, the correct way is to package everything with everything, right? And so the lazy way to port VLC to Windows is to put all the codecs in it, right? Because that was easiest. Well, at the time on Windows and on Mac, you were downloading codec packs, which were, I don't know if you've ever done that, right? Which was a nightmare, because you were downloading a codec pack and then you would download another codec pack because it still didn't work, and then you had nothing playing on your Windows and you had to reinstall your Windows. And that became one of the strongest way that VLC got popular, right? The second one was like, if ever you downloaded pirated content, which none of you ever did, right? Because I know, because that would be very illegal. And at that time, doing that would take around 24 hours on your 56K modem, right? And you would hope that your mom would not hang up the phone, right? Because it would cut. And at the end, right? What you were downloading was not what you wanted, right? You wanted something like a Mission Impossible movie, and then you got a Disney movie, or the other way around, right? But at the end, you were not happy. But because VLC is de facto a software that is not a video player, but a client for video streaming, it doesn't need the file to work. It needs just a bit of the file to play. And so you could very quickly, after half an hour, see if it was more or less a Disney or a parent movie. And also this became very important because so many videos are broken, actually, and VLC is very resistant on that. It runs everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, the last version of VLC still runs on Windows XP, but it also runs on OS 2, right? So the 5 users of OS 2 in the world are very happy. 2 of them being the VLC maintainers. But it's important to realize that we're probably on more platforms than any Google or Apple or Microsoft software, right? We support Windows XP to Windows, whatever the last one is, 11, macOS 10.7 to macOS 26, all the Linuxes, the OS 2, BOS, NetBSD, Solaris. We're on Android, right? Android TVs, we're on Apple TVs, we're on iPads, on iPhones. We even have a version on Tizen, right? We also have a version running inside the web browser, right? And this is a team of 10. The core team of VLC is 10 people. Okay. As you can see, if you close enough, right, you see it's still called VideoLAN client. There is a lot of jokes about James Bond in the VideoLAN lore, and the reason was because when they broke the first DVD decryption, the big DVD CSS fight, I'm still the maintainer of that, the only movie they had was GoldenEye, right? So there is a ton of jokes around GoldenEye and this one. This one is not GoldenEye if you... the first version that was playing TVs, the first version on macOS, the first version that actually everyone used, which on Linux, this is GNOME 2, right? It was based on WXVidget UI. Don't do that. A more modern version on Android, on macOS, and then the first version where we moved to Qt. And the last version that is probably the best because it's playing ponies, right? Important, right? Volunteers. Volunteers, 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 volunteers. This has always been the DNA. At the beginning, it was student of the school, right, over there. But very quickly, it became like young professionals who just wanted to work together, mostly remote. Most of the time, we only met once at FOSDEM. And the community grew and grew to englobe the whole FFmpeg X264 communities, right? So when you see the VideoLAN conference, this one, around maybe a fifth are related to VLC, the others are other people. Non-profit, no money, don't need money. We use the money to buy hardware, to fight legal bad people. I receive an angry lawyer letter per week. Well, actually my parents do because the VideoLAN non-profit is hosted at my parents' place. Well, when I created the non-profit, right, like I was finishing studies, right? So I knew I was going to move around, right? So the best place was my parents' place, right? So if you go to 18 Rue Charcot, it's my parents' place, and receive a ton of emails, a ton of legal letters. I got one last week, but a bad Swedish company that I will name later. Anyway, everything's done online. We use Slack for old people, right, called IRC. We've used Git before GitHub existed, right, so it was early 2007. Everything we use at the nonprofit is open source. Everything is self-hosted. If we don't do it correctly, who would do, right? So We had the code of conduct before it existed, and our community is very diverse and very weird. But what's important is that the core team of VLC is extremely small. It's extremely small, and because of that, we care a lot about code quality. And if you look at VLC, of course, we're not the Linux kernel, but you see around 1,000, 1,500 contributors, and most of them were unpaid, which is different from the kernel, right? But 10 people keep around, right? So if someone sends me something, I know he's not going to stay on the project. He can tell me, yeah, I'm going to stay, right? But statistically, he's incorrect. Statistically, you're going to change job, wife, have kids, have health issue, whatever, right? Life. So I need to be able to maintain your code. And that's okay, right? But that means that you have a ton of things that are inside VLC that are completely useless, and a ton of them that should be in VLC that are not there, because we care about the quality. We reject around half of the contributions, right? This is bad, but like so many people don't understand that it's so important for us. We have no money on marketing, almost none on legal, mostly me. We have a way that basically the community votes depending on the number of commits you have, right? So if you code, you have power. We've never had any important forks, so that's good. And so I'm going to show a few completely stupid things that we have in VLC to show you that because of its modular approach, it's very easy to add things, right? So we have a VNC and a remote desktop viewer inside VLC. Well, we had everything already, right? You can play audio, you can play video, you have clicks for DVD menus, so VNC just works. VLC is not a video player. It's actually a full multimedia framework that can decode a lot of videos, right? So a lot of people use it to do mosaics or picture-in-picture. If you go to bars and you see like big wall of screens, it's very often VLC. It's called wall display. We support karaoke. Why not, right? And funnily enough, it wasn't someone from Asia who coded that feature. We have the puzzle version of VLC, right? It's a very nice video filter. You can try it, right? You can actually click on the pieces, right? And you move it around, right? So if you have your husband or wife forces you to watch a French movie and you're bored, which is very likely. Oops, sorry. It's probably a love triangle or something, right? But anyway, very good example, right? A professor of mathematics in high school in France, around Grenoble, coded that feature with his students to show them what were Bayesian curves, right? Which is important if you do jigsaw puzzles, right? And he sent the patches to us, right? And the patches was, well, it was okay, right? And it's just a single module that is around 20 kilobytes, right? So, and because VLC has around 500 modules, adding modules doesn't slow it down because we scan it at the first install and then we never load them, right? So if you never click on that, it's not important. If you do, it works. One day, I received an email which was, puzzle too simple. I was just like, what? And the guy says, well, JB, hi, I'm sorry. I love the puzzle feature of VLC. I was just like, what? But it's too simple, right? You can do only 16 by 16, which is only 256, and I can finish before the end of the movie. That's not okay, right? And so you can see there is a commit of me changing the UI of VLC, adding the maximum to 256 to 256, which is 65K. I hope it's enough. But anyway, when you have hundreds of millions of users, any stupid fringe feature is going to be utilized. We have a version that runs, of course, in command line using ncurses. Yeah, but you still have the video output here. Well, you know what? We also have a version that is with ASCII arts, right? This is not Unicode, right? This is pure ASCII, and this feature is absolutely hugely used. Why? Well, imagine you have a multicast network that is complex, and so you have multiple routers, and at some point, there is no video anymore, right? How do you debug that? Well, you launch VLC on the router. Of course, you have no X11 or whatever wayland. You have no UI, right? So launching VLC in command line and see if you have video, right, or a black screen. This is useful. We had the first version on Android. This is probably the first LG G1. It evolved for tablets. We have a version on Android TVs. We had VLC on the iPhones. It got in, Apple kicked us out, we had a GPL issue, we got kicked out again, we went again, then Dolby shut us down. I think we went out 3 times, but it still works. Now it's still on the app stores. We have a version on the Apple Watch. This is absolutely useless, yes. It will drain your battery in 5 minutes, yes. Why did you do it? Because it was fun. Apple TVs, we had versions on the defunct Windows UWP platform. We even have a version on Tizen, and Tizen is also a dead operating system for phones. It's only now using TVs. We had versions on doing VR, but what I want to talk to you about is this, right? Because as you clearly all know and recognize, right, those are Japanese characters, right, kanjis and katakana hiraganas, and then in Korea. And Korean. And then this, which all of you recognize as Malayalam. So the story arrives, it's around, I don't know, almost 8 years ago, 10 years ago. I received an email from a guy called Salahuddin Salah, and he says, hey, JB, I'm in East Aleppo. I'm just looking at the news, bombing. I got 2 hours of internet per day and 2 hours of electricity, but I use those to basically charge my batteries. Can I do something on VLC? Don't you want something else? Shelter or visa? No, I want to work on VLC. Okay. Oh, by the way, I don't know how to code in C too much. Okay. And so I give him a bug in Arabic, right? Because rendering of Arabic is quite difficult if you don't know, right? Because the letters, depending on the letters, the glyphs, right? So the designs are different, right? So I give him a bug, and he goes, and I'm just like, who cares? 2 months later, he comes back with a patch, horrible. I tell him, wow, this is crap, like redo it like that. And he goes away, right? He comes back 3 months later, the patch is perfect, right? I give him another bug, perfect. So, and in Arabic, there is also something called bidirectional because they write left to right and right to left, depending if it's Arabic or numbers. It's a nightmare. Anyway, and now I don't have anything to tell him to do, right? So I give him, well, actually, I got a bug in Hebrew. And I'm just like, JB, are you asking to a guy who's in Syria being bombed to actually support Hebrew? And I was just like, the guy doesn't care, he does it, right? And he says, well, I'm bored, right? So okay, I need the support of complex text layout, right? So those mostly Indian languages and Southeast languages are extremely complex, right? Because you see stuff like that are quite difficult to render. Because you have like 5, 6, or 7 letters and you put inside one design, one glyph, and then you need to find the right font on your computer. If you look closely, like subtitle is probably one of the most complex parts of VLC. There is not many people who are actually doing it, right? The people who are doing it are basically Microsoft, Apple, Chrome, Firefox, GNOME, and that's it, right? And we have one version of VLC done by a guy who was doing that because he was bored. In the end, I asked him what he wanted, like at the end. He says, can I have like a letter of recommendation and an email? So he has a VideoLAN email, and the guy is happy. This is quite insane, but realize that the community is very diverse, and like it's a project that was done by a student who were 22 at the time, or people who were done under the bombs, right? So people can contribute to open source. It's not that difficult. We're working, like a normal version of VLC is around 20,000 commits. We have around 4,000 or 5,000 commits per year. That gives you an idea, right? So it's quite large, and yet it's quite small, right? If you compare to Firefox, if you compare to Chromium, I'm not sure it's open source anymore, anyway. Or if you compare to Linux kernel, this is quite small, but compared to most of the other communities, it's quite large, and everything we do is with almost no funding. This is probably what VLC4 will look like, maybe not, we'll see. What are we working on? We are working a lot on VLC.wasm, which is compiling the 15 millions of lines of code of VLC to the web browser using WebAssembly. That's insane, yes. We're also working on hardening VLC because there is a big problem with VLC that it opens too many formats. Most of the formats parsing were done in the 90s or 2000. It's written in C, so you can imagine how many security issues we have. And even if we fixed all of those, you realize that in the VLC process, when it's running, it's actually loading stuff like Mesa or some OpenGL drivers, which means that you're running inside your process code that is not yours. So the only way to do that is to actually do sandbox, but no sandbox in the world exists for multimedia. When you do a sandbox like Chrome, right, you're going to download 4 or 5 megabytes of CSS and JavaScript. 4 or 5 megabytes is a joke in multimedia, right? We're talking about hundreds of megabits per second, so this is quite complex. And now I'm working on Kyber, which is using VLC and FFmpeg to do remote control of machines, drone, robots, computers, being open source and cross-platform. So that you can basically, in any type of OSs, do remote desktop, remote rendering, remote phones. And all that is based on VLC and FFmpeg. This year we showed something related to AI. I know the community doesn't like too much AI, but what we wanted to show was that you can run AI that is running locally and that is done ethically, and you don't need a cloud provider. Yes, I'm CTO of a cloud provider, so I know about that. And we showed that you could do automatic subtitle, but mostly automatic translations. And you run that on your machine. You don't need to buy NVIDIA GPUs, which cost a fortune. It was, like, the response we had was huge, because there is so, especially because most of the people in the community, there is a lot of Americans, there is a lot of Anglo-Saxon, German, French, and they all speak English, right? They don't care too much, right? But if you're from East Europe countries, Asian countries, a lot of the content is not translated at all, or it takes a lot of time to get it, right? And we show that AI can be done in an open source way. We worked a lot on object-based audio also, because there is a big bad company called Dolby, and so we do our best to kill Dolby. And one of the reasons Karen saw the Visio TV on the street is that they introduce a new format every 5 years, and this is pushing why we need new. So we are basically developing open object-based audio that is open source and open formats to kill those type of companies. And thanks, and I think we have 1 minute left, so I have one question. Yeah, you were first.
Yeah, you talked about how you are getting like letters from lawyers on the regular. How was it the first time?
I was scared. But then you realize that most lawyers are completely incompetent, including copyright. And so I started learning. And de facto, I know quite a lot about copyright, about IP in general, and more than many lawyers. But usually my first answer is, oh, bonjour, je ne parle pas anglais. Pouvez-vous me parler en anglais? This removes 80% of them, right? And then, usually it's about some patents, right? And say, list me the patents. And I'm an expert in patent busting, and I destroyed so many patents. I'm actually now paid by some other companies who are fighting patents in the US. I'm doing that on my free time. Thank you very much, and have a good show.